In 1993, a gruesome and highly sensational case shocked the Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. A young exotic dancer was brutally murdered, her body dismembered into 11 parts and discarded along the roadside. Her face was disfigured beyond recognition, leaving the police unable to identify her. Law enforcement published photos of her swollen and decomposed face in newspaper, images that were later dubbed Malaysia's most horrifying pictures. What stunned the public even more was the unexpected way in which her identity was ultimately confirmed not through traditional forensic methods, but by the distinctive grooming of her pubic hair. This is Charles. Today I'll take you to the story of the one red dot. On the afternoon of July 8, 1993, in Tukun Hill, a high-end residential area in Kuala Lumpur, a sanitation worker made a chilling discovery while cleaning a lawn. The worker spotted two black plastic bags in the bushes. Curious and puzzled, he found it odd that such littering would occur in a prestigious neighborhood known for its affluent and well-mannered residents. The area was renowned for its cleanliness, and even Malaysia's founding father, Tunku Abdul Rahman, had once lived there. Driven by curiosity, the worker opened the bags and was horrified by what he found. Inside was a severed human arm, neatly sawed off. Overcome with fear, he staggered backward, drenched in sweat despite the midsummer heat. The police were quickly called to the scene and initiated a thorough search of the area. They uncovered several more plastic bags scattered across nearby bushes and ditches. Each bag contained cleaning dismembered body parts that had been washed and carefully packed. So the theories on this disposal, the locations of these scattered remains, led investigators to believe the killer likely drove around in a vehicle and threw the bags out of the window while in motion. Forensic experts determined all the body parts belonged to the same woman, estimated to be in her 30s. The cuts were precise and methodical, suggesting the killer had used sharp tools. But the head, crucial for identifying the victim, was still missing, leaving the authorities with no way to confirm her identity. So police sealed off the area and launched an intensive search operation to locate the missing pieces. And then a breakthrough in the search for identity. 3 days later, on July 11, 1993, the police made a significant discovery. The remaining body parts, including the victim's head, were found. But the recovery of the head brought little relief. The scorching heat and passage of time had caused the corpse to severely decompose, and the head was unrecognizable, offering no clues to the victim's identity. And its horrific appearance, coupled with the stench of decay, made it nearly impossible for investigators to examine closely without feeling sick. With no other options, the police sought the help of Untold, a forensic artist, to reconstruct the victim's face based on her skull structure. Despite battling nausea and the overwhelming stench, Untold spent 4 painstaking hours creating a portrait of the victim. When he finished, the police were thrilled with the results. They published the reconstructed portrait alongside photos of the victim's body parts in newspaper, appealing to the public for leads. No doubt there's a shocking public reaction. The published photos caused a national uproar. The gruesome images, coupled with the simulated portrait, were described as the most terrifying photos ever published in Malaysia media history. The case dominated headlines, shocking the public and fueling widespread speculation. That experience left a profound psychological scar on Untold. The stench and the horror of the scene caused him to vomit without control during and after his work. He later became a vegetarian, unable to stomach the sight or smell of meat ever again. Fortunately, Untold's efforts paid off. Shortly after the images were released, a witness came forward, claiming to have information about the victim's identity. The case took a turn when a female landlord contacted the police. She reported that her female tenant had been missing for several days and bore a strong resemblance to the portrait published in the newspaper. Acting on the lead, the police headed to the missing tenant's residence. Upon arrival, the officers found the apartment door locked and the unit empty. After breaking down the door, they discovered several glamorous, professionally taken photos of a beautiful woman with a striking resemblance to the victim depicted in the sketch. To confirm whether the missing tenant was indeed the murder victim, the police conducted a thorough search of the apartment. Then, they uncovered a note with an address, which led them to the tenant's sister, Cai Xingdi, and this led to another heartbreaking identification. On July 20, Cai Xingdi went to the police station to identify the remains. Despite the severe decomposition of the body, she immediately recognized the victim as her little sister, Cai Yousi. Overcome with grief, she broke down in tears. So the police were puzzled. The corpse was so decomposed that even forensic experts struggled to extract identifying information. How could a regular worker like Cai Xingdi so confidently identify the remains at first glance? Was it possible that she knew something more about the murder? Could she even be the dismembered killer herself? When questioned by the police, Cai Xingdi initially hesitated and avoided providing clear answers. Sensing the officer's growing suspicion, she became increasingly flustered and ultimately revealed the reason behind her certainty. The reason Cai Xingdi was so certain that the victim was her little sister Cai Yousi lay in a very unusual detail. The pubic hair on the victim's body had been trimmed into a very distinctive pattern. This matches Cai Yousi's personal grooming habit, a detail only someone very close to her would know. This unique characteristic left no doubt in Cai Xingdi's mind that the victim was indeed her younger sister. Now, let's take a closer look on the life and the tragic death of Cai Yousi. Cai Yousi, a 30-year-old woman working as a nightclub dancer in Kuala Lumpur, was once a prominent figure in the entertainment scene, known by her stage name 1 Point Red. She was a star exotic dancer at local clubs. Due to the revealing nature of her performance costumes, Cai had developed a habit of trimming her pubic hair to prevent accidental exposure. But ironically, this intimate grooming detail became the key clue that allowed her sister, Cai Xingdi, to confirm her identity after her death. And now let's take a look at the DNA confirmation. Following Cai Xingdi's statement, a DNA comparison between her and the victim were conducted, confirming that the two were indeed biologically related. This officially identified the victim as 1 Point Red Cai Yousi. While this marked a significant breakthrough in this case, but the investigators felt no sense of triumph. The stark contrast between Cai's radiant presence in her glamorous photographs and her cold, decomposed remains in the morgue left a heavy impact on everyone involved. It was clear to all that Cai Yousi's young life had been brutally and tragically cut short, her vibrancy forever frozen in that summer of 1993. Cai Xingdi recounted her sister's difficult upbringings to the police. The family of 5 siblings grew up in poverty, which each child forced to find work from a young age to survive. The youngest of the siblings, Cai Yousi, dropped out of school as a teenager and left her hometown of Kota Bharu to seek better opportunities in Kuala Lumpur. She initially struggled to make ends meet, but after years of effort, her life finally began to improve. At 23, Cai Yousi met her ex-husband, He Chengkun, and the two had 2 children together. However, the relationship soon fell apart, leaving Cai to raise the children on her own. To support her family, she worked multiple jobs, often relying on Cai Xingdi or daycare to look after the children when her workload became overwhelming. While working as a seamstress, Cai met some nightclub dancers who came in to have their costumes mended. So through this chance encounter, she was introduced to the world of entertainment, where she quickly gained popularity as a dancer. Her move into nightclub industry brought a substantial increase in income, allowing her to improve her standard of living. Tsai's talent had charisma, even led to offer for out-of-town performances. Just days before her murder, Tsai had left a note in her older sister's mailbox, stating that she was going to Penang with some friends and would return in about 10 days. Tsai Xingdi had planned to celebrate with her little sister upon her return, but instead, this departure turned out to be their final goodbye. So let's take a look at this complex social circle and a critical lead. As police reflected on the tragedy of Tsai Yousi's death, they couldn't help but feel overwhelmed by the challenges of this investigation. As a popular exotic dancer, Tsai had a complex network of relationships, making the task of identifying suspects a monumental challenge. But there comes a key breakthrough. At this critical moment, Tsai Yousi's sister, Tsai Xingdi, provided a crucial lead. She mentioned that Tsai Yousi had been particularly close to a man named Yan Weishen, but there was a problem. Yan was already married. Tensions had arisen between Tsai and Yan's wife, and the two women had reportedly had unpleasant interactions in the past. This information immediately caught the attention of the investigators. They decided to focus their investigation on Yan Weishen and his wife, believing their relationship with Tsai Yousi could be central to the case. But there's an unexpected development. Before the police could proceed with their investigation, a surprising event occurred. Yan Weishen walked into the police station alone and voluntarily approached to the offices. So let's take a look at the information of Yan Weishen. At 33-year-old, Yan Weishen was known for his refined demeanor, often appealing, gentle, and scholarly. His neatly styled hair and signature glasses give him the impression of a soft-spoken intellectual. When questioned by the police, Yan presented a note, allegedly left from him by Tsai Yousi, which contained content identical to the note Tsai Xingdi had received. "I'm going to Penang with Miss Li. I'll call you after I return in 10 days. Under the pressure of police questioning, Yan admitted to having a close relationship with Tsai Yousi that were beyond mere friendship. He claimed that Tsai had indeed left him the note before departing for Penang. Yan also expressed disbelief at the news of Tsai's gruesome murder in Kuala Lumpur, stating that she should have been in Penang at the time. But investigators determined that Tunku Hill, where the remains were found, was only a dumping site, not the primary crime scene. This left this possibility that the murder could have occurred elsewhere, possibly even in Penang, as Yang suggested. And then there's a timeline inconsistency. The police discover a critical flaw in Yan's story. Both Yan and Tsai Xingdi received these notes around July 10, yet Tsai's body was found on July 8. This means the victim had already been dead for 2 days before the notes were delivered, making it impossible for Tsai to have written and sent them herself. The timeline strongly indicated that the notes were sent by someone else, most likely the killer, attempting to mislead the investigation. Additionally, the police realized Yan, a native Malaysian, was illiterated in Chinese. Despite this, Yan showed no suspicion about receiving a Chinese written note from Tsai Yousi. This raised questions about the note's authenticity and Yan's involvement in its creation. Piecing together the evidence, the police saw through Yan's elaborated deception. Yan likely fabricated the note to buy himself time, ensuring Tsai Xingdi would not suspect her sister's disappearance too quickly. By presenting the note to the police, he attempted to redirect their focus on Penang, steering suspicion away from himself and delaying the investigation. The evidence painted a clear picture. Yan had deliberately orchestrated the scheme, using the notes as part of a self-directed play to evade justice. Realizing the mounting evidence, the police made a decisive move. They showed photos of Tsai Yousi's dismembered remains to Yan Weishen. Although Yan tried to maintain his composure, his shifty gaze and nervous demeanor betrayed him. Unable to hide any longer, Yan was arrested on the spot. During interrogation, he confessed to the murder and admitted to dismembering Tsai Yousi's body, and now revealing a relationship built on contradictions. Yan's confession revealed the story of how he and Tsai Yousi first met. Tsai Yousi had just started working as a nightclub dancer, while she acknowledged the disreputable nature of her job. She realized that mastering a talent or skill could quickly elevate her popularity and income. On the recommendation of a friend, she was introduced to Yan Weishen, a piano teacher, and began taking lessons from him. During their lessons, Yan's gentle and refined demeanor deeply attracted Cai, while her captivating beauty and charm left Yan enchanted. The two, both in their 30s, quickly entered into a romantic relationship. For Cai, who had endured a failed marriage and spent 7 years raising 2 children alone, life had been a lonely struggle in a foreign land. She longed for a stable relationship and dreamed of building a happy family. Cai often spoke excitedly to Yan about her dream of marriage and their life together. Her eyes sparkled with hope as she envisioned their fortune. But Yan always responded with silence. A man of high education, Yan had studied theology in Singapore and worked as a short-term missionary. His family was deeply conservative and would never accept Cai's profession as an exotic dancer, let alone approve of a marriage between the two. Despite their relationship, Yan knew he could never bring Cai into his life permanently. For him, marriage with Cai Yousi was never a possibility. Cai Yousi was not blind to the realities of their situation. She understood that the social pressure and family expectations that Yan Weishen faced. Yet, she chose to believe in their love, trusting that it could overcome social norms and changing prejudiced minds. Cai hoped that their genuine connection and her perseverance would eventually lead to a happy ending. But this hopeful dream was shattered by Yan himself. 3 months prior to the crime, Yan publicly celebrated his marriage to a woman chosen by his family. He then broke up with Cai, leaving her devastated. Overcome with grief and anger, Cai couldn't bring herself to leave Yan. Instead, she clung to their memories, hoping to rekindle their love and win him back. She began pressuring him to divorce his wife and fulfill the promises they had once made to each other. But this caused Yan's growing contempt. Cai's persistent attempts to reconcile only fueled Yan's irritation and contempt. He no longer felt the thrill of their romance and saw her as an obstacle. Yan had no intention of leaving his new wife, especially since she was pregnant, and their marriage aligned perfectly with his family's expectations. Because in Yan's mind, there was no reason to jeopardize his future for a nightclub dancer someone society viewed with disdain. On the night of the crime, Cai arranged to meet Yan at his apartment. She seduced him, and the two had sexual relations once again. Afterward, Cai brought up the topic of marriage, pleading with Yan to leave his wife and commit to her. Yan's response was cold and final. He firmly refused and reiterated that their relationship was over. His indifference pushed Cai to her breaking point. Enraged and emotionally unstable, Cai stormed into the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and threatened to kill Yan's wife. During the ensuing struggle, the knife nicked Yan, further escalating the situation. As the argument escalated and the struggle continued, Yan Weishen's patience finally snapped. Overcome with rage, he grabbed the knife from Cai Yousi and stabbed her in the chest, piercing her heart. Blood poured from the wound, and Cai collapsed. It wasn't until she took her final breaths that Yan realized the enormity of what he had done. Panicked, but determined to hide the crime, Yan set about cleaning the crime scene. He then dismembered Cai's body into smaller pieces to make it easier to dispose of. Carrying the remains in black plastic bags, he discarded them at various locations in Tangku Hill, hoping to obscure the evidence. To further cover his tracks, Yan forged 2 notes in Cai Yousi's handwriting. One was sent to Cai Xingdi in an attempt to delay her suspicions about her sister's disappearance. The other one he kept for himself, planning to use it as proof during police questioning. Yan assumed his scheme would mislead the authorities, but his arrogance betrayed him. The inconsistency in the timeline and language detail of the forged notes eventually exposed the lies, unraveling his carefully constructed facade. From December 13 to 15, 1993, the first phase of hearings for the case was held. Yan Weishen was charged with murder and remanded to prison, awaiting the second stage of the trial. On February 28, 1994, during the second hearing, the case took a dramatic turn. The prosecution decided to downgrade the charge from murder to manslaughter. This meant that Yan would escape the death penalty and instead face a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison. Facing the court, Yan's defense team presented his caution statements as their primary evidence to plead for leniency. The statement detailed the emotional strain and mental torment Cai Yousi had allegedly inflicted on Yan over time, as well as the events leading to the incidents. Using the defendant's own cautioned confession as basis for mitigation was a rare legal move. The defense hoped to demonstrate that Yan had killed unintentionally, acting unopposed during the moment of emotional distress. The deputy public prosecutor strongly disagreed, pointing out Yan's calculated behavior during the dismembered process. His actions concealed the crime, which indicated a clear intention to cover up the truths. Despite these arguments, the court accepted the defense claim of manslaughter, citing the mitigating factors presented. And then, Yan Weishen was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Dissatisfied with the verdict, Yan filed an appeal to the High Court. On December 3, 1994, the High Court reduced his sentence to 12 years. Additionally, Yan was ordered to compensate the victim's family with 1,000 ringgit, failing which he would face an additional year of imprisonment. In 2000, Yan Weishen was released early from prison due to sentence reduction. By then, the life he once knew had crumbled. His newly wife, who was pregnant at the time of his crime, had suffered a miscarriage and subsequently moved abroad to start new. The luxury apartments where the gruesome murder and dismember took place was now abandoned, carrying a reputation as a haunted building, its gates locked and the atmosphere ominous. Yan's parents, likely seeking to escape the stigma attached to their family names, have moved from Seremban to Perak. In a deeply ironic twist, Yan returned to his family and chose to follow in his father's footsteps, studying theology and becoming a missionary. Living under assumed identity, Yan completely erased his past. While the name Yan Weishen remained infamous, few connected it to the polite, soft-spoken preacher using his English alias. By this late 40s, Yan was reportedly enjoying a new life and had even found love again, settling into a seemingly tranquil existence. His horrific past, along with the unimaginable crime he committed, was buried beneath layers of reinventions. To those who met him later in life, he appeared to be a gentle and devout man, with no hint of the dark history that once defined him. I'm Charles, dedicated to bring you in-depth case analysis. If you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Have a case you'd like me to cover? Feel free to share in the comment section. I'll see you next time.